Today we are going to talk about the crazy price action in Bitcoin for the last few months.
We're
To infinity and beyond.
on where? 42,000, 43,000.
Yeah, it traced back a bit from 44 just a few days ago. But I mean, it's run from, let's say from June, from about 27,000 to 42 now, which is like an increase of almost 50%,
Yeah,
even more.
wild. All owing to Bitcoin spot ETF potential approval.
Yeah, the BlackRock ETF filing went in June, and I think that's kind of why everyone's trying to front run that. So it's added about $300 billion to the
They
Bitcoin.
love to speculate.
Everyone's like front running this thing, even more money than what could potentially come in from the ETF.
Yeah, yeah. What is the market cap now, actually,
I
of
think we're
Bitcoin?
about 850 billion.
In the that high? Hey?
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
cool.
it's mad. Yeah. What do you know about a spot ETF?
Um, so essentially, from what I understand, so now BlackRock is applying. Actually, many companies have applied now for a spot ETF for Bitcoin. So essentially, what they want to do is purchase a lot of Bitcoin and then make trading the Bitcoin on their platform available, right?
Yeah.
Or other companies can also trade it, but from them, and they will essentially custody or hold whatever Bitcoin that they're making available for trading.
Yeah, so the way I like to think about it is imagine you wanted to buy an asset like gold, but you didn't actually want to hold the gold and keep it secure. So let's imagine your bank had a treasure chest, and in that treasure chest they had 1,000 gold coins. Now they kept that treasure chest secure in their vaults, and no one could access it. It's safe, and they issued 1,000 shares in the form of an ETF, representing one gold coin is one share.
Okay.
Now they would sell you these shares, and you could use those to trade, essentially.
So it's like you don't have to take on the additional risk of actually having that asset.
Yeah, so you know that the gold is secure, and you just buy your share in the form of an ETF, and then you can trade that. So it removes the whole security aspect from it.
Okay, cool. So now this is what BlackRock intends to do, and many other companies have applied. I think Grayscale actually got declined their approval.
They had a trust that held Bitcoin, and you could be an owner in the trust, or a partner in the trust. And essentially, they're trying to convert that into an ETF so people can trade it. Because at the moment, even after the FTX thing, people didn't even know if they still had the Bitcoin. You were like a shareholder in the trust, but whether or not they had it, you weren't sure.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, so now SEC, what is the steps moving forward? So everyone's saying first quarter next year, some decision will be made, and they're kind of a bit optimistic on it.
Yeah. People seem to really think that it's going to be approved. The dates are 5th of Jan to about 10th of Jan that they have to approve, or kind of give a valid reason for why it would be rejected.
Okay, and then on this, do other companies after this they do the same application and then it gets approved, or is there some sort of reason why it'll be approved for one and not approved for another? This obviously just kind of ties into like the price, right? Because BlackRock has got a certain amount of assets under management, and then they'll allocate a certain portion of that to the ETF. But then other asset managing and management companies will do the same thing, right?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of things that go into it. For one is surveillance sharing agreements, and to know that the assets are actually custodied in a safe way. So for instance, BlackRock is saying Coinbase is going to custody um, their assets. So like if Grayscale, for instance,
Just on that,
has
I'm really obsessed with Brian Armstrong. Like, I think he's so awesome. Like,
yeah,
I'm a big fan. Yeah.
so but Brian Armstrong is the CEO of
Mm.
Coinbase, for those of you who don't know. Yeah, so everyone seems to think that they're not just going to approve one, they're going to approve a bunch at once, but that's yet to be determined.
Okay, so the premise for which it'll be approved or not approved, what does that come down to?
I think the issue is that Gary Gensler, who is the chairman of the SEC, he just doesn't like crypto, right? And they haven't given good reasonings. That's why Grayscale for their trust, they actually filed a lawsuit against the SEC where they won, where they said, you haven't given us sufficient reasoning for why you've rejected our proposal. So it just kind of seems like they don't like crypto and they just want to reject the ETF on all accounts.
Okay, I did see that their reasoning for declining it was something about it's open to market manipulation or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. So that basically means that they think that if they approve it, BlackRock and all of these other institutions who want to initiate it are not going to have a fair and free market, and they're going to intentionally manipulate it. So what that would look like is, for instance, let's say spoofing. This is where, because you get an order book, so when you trade, there's an order book, right? And you can see everyone who's making bids at a certain price and everyone's making sell claims or sell orders at a certain price. So once that information comes open in the ETF, BlackRock could, for instance, make a fake large order of Bitcoin at a certain price, and everyone thinks, okay, like there's a big order coming in, and then they're gonna start buying it in anticipation, trying to front run it. Meanwhile, they'll cancel that order then after the fact. And it's already run a bit because everyone's gotten into that anticipation, and someone in BlackRock would have purchased an amount of Bitcoin before that. So kind of things like that.
Oh, but I mean, a company like BlackRock with availability to so many assets, can they not do this to many other types of shares? Like, what specifically makes Bitcoin different here?
I'm not sure actually. I think they like to say that the market cap is a lot smaller, but it's like 800
900
billion.
billion,
Yeah,
800 billion
it's a
is.
lot. That's why I personally don't know why they are rejecting it. It could also be the custodying of the assets. Like this is now something that's completely different, right? You have to custody it in a secure way. So for Bitcoin, for instance, you have to have cold storage. You have to maybe multi-sig wallets or multi-sig
Yeah.
security, something like that. And I don't know, to be honest, at the SEC, who would stay there who actually understands blockchain technology a lot. Like, why would you go and be with the regulators? Because if you understand the industry, you're going to love it and you're going to want to see it progress. And there's so many companies out there
And
doing
there's so much opportunity as well. So it's like the if you understand it well enough, at that point it'll be a lot more profitable to actually be with a company that is developing blockchain technology rather than join the SEC.
pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so the SEC obviously, like on an ETF basis, is now America. There's spot ETFs for Bitcoin from other jurisdictions, other areas in the world.
Yeah, I think there are some in Europe and Asia, probably. Yeah, I think it's just the US is the world's biggest market.
Okay, so it is made available in other accounts, but then
And in the US, there are futures ETFs which have been approved.
so the SEC approved. Yeah, I did hear about that. So the SEC approved the futures futures Bitcoin trading, but not the spot trading. Now, what is fundamentally the difference?
So with futures contracts, you never actually purchase the underlying asset. So what it is, it's a contract where you say in a month's time, I will buy Bitcoin at this price. And you basically go into that agreement, and as time passes, let's say, for instance, you say, I agree to buy it at 30,000. And in a month's time, it's at 35,000. So then you would have gained that 5,000. Now, when that month comes to date, you never actually buy the Bitcoin. You just settle with the person who took the other end of that deal, who thought it was going to go down. So you have three options at expiry. You can take the opposite position. So if you agreed to buy it at 30,000, then you can just before take the agreement to sell it at 30,000. So it kind of nets off. You can extend it. So you can like move it forward another month. That's an option. And then the last one is you settle it. Now with Bitcoin ETFs, futures contracts, you don't actually settle in the Bitcoin. you settle in cash for the difference of what the price is versus what the price you agree to pay it in. So there's no Bitcoin changing hands in those.
So it's purely like almost like a betting platform, right? Like
Yeah.
they just offer like bet, like there's no Bitcoin being bought, there's no Bitcoin being custody, there's not like none of that. It's just you and I are saying, okay, I think it's gonna be 35,000, you think it's gonna be 30,000, let's make a bet.
Yeah.
And then
I mean, Future started out as a beautiful thing, right? It was like, let's say, for instance, there's a farmer who was growing potatoes, and you used potatoes in your KFC, whatever, and then you weren't sure what the price of the potatoes was going to be in 2 months, so you agreed with the farmer, okay, I will buy this many potatoes at this price in the future. He agrees, like everyone's happy, and then you get finance people who come in and say, "Oh, there's contracts going on here, like there's speculation. Let's start making bets here." And that's what it is. It's just kind of betting on what the price is, if it's going to go up or down.
Americans probably started this. Love to trade, love to bet.
It's all finance people.
All finance
It's all
people.
finance people.
Okay, so moving forward now, let's say that the spot ETF does get approved. What does that look like for Bitcoin? It's obviously run a lot in anticipation for this. But like, where do you foresee the numbers going?
Yeah, if only I knew. So it's run more than $300 billion in anticipation already. Now, if it does get approved, like BlackRock isn't going to put $300 billion into it. I don't think at even close to that amount. Like some estimates say even 70 billion is a lot. But I think what it does show is that there is a narrative shift, and it's combining TradFi, which is traditional finance, with decentralized finance. So it's kind of bringing that institutional interest into the market. So once BlackRock starts trading ETFs, which other fund managers are going to want to have Bitcoin exposure, other crypto exposure? And it could start with Bitcoin and then Ethereum.
Yeah. On that, I wouldn't necessarily then say it's even about the money. It's about accepting that Bitcoin is part of the future. You know, like it's not just people who are anti-government and whatever. It's really just saying, okay, this is becoming a part of life. BlackRock is on board, all the other asset managers are on board, that everyone is kind of going to just start trusting it a lot more. And that alone is just going to give it credibility for the future.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now, one thing to point out, though, is that Satoshi Nakamoto, who is the founder of Bitcoin, he kind of had these libertarian views of an alternative financial system after what happened in 2008, so we wouldn't have to rely on the traditional financial system. So this is kind of going against that in a sense, because firstly, now you're talking about centralized ownership. So BlackRock would hold it and you would own the ETF. So you don't actually own the underlying Bitcoin because you don't have the private to public keys. So that, and it's kind of bringing the traditional finance, which is what we're trying to avoid, into the space.
Correct. I do, however, think, just on that Satoshi Nakamoto thing, in his view, it was also meant as a currency, right? It was never meant to just be this asset that people hold and
Speculate on.
Yeah, speculate on. Like, I think his intention is completely not followed anyway in that regard.
Yeah, I think it's still early, but like there are places that accept Bitcoin as payment for things. But like no one's going to use Bitcoin to like pay for stuff.
Yeah, but what I'm saying for now, the way that it's going on to BlackRock was in any way not what Satoshi Nakamoto, I think, had in mind anyway.
Yeah. I wonder what he would say.
But even on that though, the process, the responsibility needed to own your own Bitcoin is too much for the masses, right? Like to have to really
for the masses. Yeah. We try to send stuff to a cold storage.
Yeah, it's stressful.
It's not for just the masses. Like, that shit is stressful.
Yeah, you really have to like understand the technology and stuff. So I think this is a nice way to get exposure, where like some people just need a centralized authority in charge, right? Like it's just necessary.
Yeah, I mean, like if you lose your private key, if you lose your recovery phrase or something, you are screwed, and you can't go to anyone and say, "Yo, please, like." Log into your server and just recover it, because that doesn't exist. So it's appealing to the masses now, which don't want to do that, and they don't want to custody Bitcoin. It's also expensive to custody Bitcoin. It's expensive to move it around, whereas an ETF is a lot more liquid and a lot cheaper transaction fees.
Yeah. On a side note, what do you think happens to Coinbase, since they're the chosen ones to like potentially custody those Bitcoin?
I
Once again,
don't.
massive fan of
Brian Armstrong.
Brian Armstrong, so big supporter.
Um, I don't know, to be honest. Coinbase, I mean, it's good for them and they're doing well, but I still think that a lot of the tokens that they trade or that trade on the exchange are kind of going to be classified as securities, and the SEC is going to keep hunting them down for that.
Oh, they're still going through their own lawsuit,
Yeah.
eh?
I mean, every crypto company really is.
Yeah, but I mean that will just have them getting some sort of fine and then having to remove certain securities off their exchange. Yeah, so maybe it'll like kind of hedge, like they'll get some advantage of custodying the assets for BlackRock, but then they'll have to remove a whole bunch of tokens on their exchange.
Yeah, so I think the key points to take away from this are basically that an ETF is a way of buying Bitcoin without having to hold the underlying Bitcoin. So it's kept securely, and you just hold the ETF like a share, essentially. It's easy to purchase, so you can buy it from your traditional brokerage account. So you don't have to go to a cryptocurrency exchange and do all of that stuff. It's easier for the masses to purchase.
All right. So I guess we'll see what happens in Q1 next year.
Cool.
Cool. All right. Enjoy.